right, again, you're going to have to help me with this last one here on 6.4. I don't remember what I took out, what I didn't take out. So this is from the script.js file for that program. My guess is if I was stupid, I probably, oh geez, I don't know what I pulled out of here. Did I take the guts out of the functions? I don't remember what I did. All right. So you can read those first two, right? So you can start with those. Now, hopefully you're to the point where you can look at some of this stuff and it makes sense, such as, what is it saying there? Find whatever has the ID of size and set it equal to select box. Then notice since it's a selected index, you know that that's going to probably be like a drop-down list, and you want nothing selected. So that's why the selected index is equal to -1. And here, we're actually going through and we're saying, hey, we don't want to set a CSS property. So we're saying the name of the element dot style, which means we're doing some CSS, dot box shadow equals none. So by default, it would probably have a box shadow on it, and we're telling it we don't want that there. All right. Then we're going down with this instructions. So notice we say that the color should be black. And if the value that's in there is the placeholder, which means they didn't enter anything yet because the placeholder's in there. So we're setting the value to nothing. All right. In other words, this will work on older browsers. Okay. This is mimicking us putting placeholder equals in the HTML, but we're doing it with JavaScript. That's what's important. So this would work with older browsers. That's what I'm telling you. Does everybody have the first function, the remove select default? The first one there? I'll move that up a little bit. So this, as it says, will remove the placeholder text, this zero placeholder. This will put it back. So again, we are mimicking with JavaScript code you doing like the placeholder attribute that now exists in HTML5. And again, you're still going to find sites out there that have this. I want you to realize that. It's not why, it's like, well, this was just a big joke. We should never have even done this. No. There's a chance you're going to find this stuff out there in the real world. Again, I would take this one right here and I would copy it and then paste it in here and make the changes accordingly. You do what you want to do, but especially those of you who are not these fastest typists. Does everybody have this one on top here done, the zero placeholder? Yes? Everybody have the check placeholder one here done? And you have to be getting to the point, if you look up on the screen here and you look at what's in gray, this has to start somewhat making sense to you. In other words, this is saying that if I click on a field, give it the focus, it's going to automatically equate 0 placeholder with that. And if I leave a field, it's going to do a check placeholder. Think about what that's doing. Please think about it. That's saying when I go into a field, 0 placeholder, it's saying either to add or to remove that placeholder text when I either go into a field or leave a field. Again, much of this has been automated. No, these are specific to what you're checking for here is you're checking modernizer output. All right. So you wouldn't necessarily be calling them all the time. All right. But again, this would be basically checking to see if you were using an older browser. Like I said, this is referred to more as legacy code. All right, that is in there. You probably won't have to change it. And over time, might even just totally comment it out if you're working on an app. I would never recommend getting rid of it, but you might just want to comment it out if you say, you know what, we're not supporting it's only HTML5 now. All right, then you might have to go back and do some rework, but your site would probably run crisper and cleaner if you did it that way. Give you a couple more minutes, and then there's just one more. There's probably about 10 more lines of code, and then that's it after this. Then we're going to go and look at the miles per gallon program. We're going to do that quickly. I want to be done as quick as possible. I'm not trying to cut into your lab time, and I already am. Is this helping? I mean, is it helping to understand what's going on? And I'm not lying to you. This stuff isn't easy. You know what? And I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but I will anyway. And that is to just say, if you say, I don't get this, and if I say, okay, Tony, you say you don't get this. He didn't say that, but let's say he does. And I say, did you read the chapter? No, I didn't. Then I don't really feel bad for you. I'm sorry, I don't. The chapter isn't a panacea. It's not a cure-all. Doesn't mean that as soon as you read the chapter, boom, everything makes sense. But if you read the chapter and you actually do the exercises that are in the chapter, the chapter exercises, that's why those are assigned. Even though you're basically just typing in what's already in there, you're doing that so you're getting some repetition down. Hopefully that's making some sense. Does everybody have this function done? Yes? Anybody still working on it? Because that's everything. That's the rest of it. So I'll give you a minute to do that. I'm going to use the facilities. Then we come back, we're going to look at the we're going to look at the miles per gallon program, which we'll do further. When you've finished with that, please open up. There's there's a folder in there, I think, that's called MPG. All right. And what I've given you is the working HTML file, the working CSS file, but the JavaScript file is only partially working. So we're going to look at the code for that in just a minute. All right, does everybody have that then? Let's go on to the last one. This one I am going to do along with you. So right now, if you run it, it looks like this. All right, but you'll notice I can put numbers in there, but I click calculate, nothing happens, and I click reset, nothing happens. We're going to fix that right now. All right, so you're all intelligent people. All right, that might be a surprise to some of you, but you are all intelligent people. That said, especially, if it's a week from tomorrow and you're taking the test, and I tell you to create a form for your BMI program, and it has last name, first name, height, weight, etc., I would start by, since you have it, I would grab this form and copy it and start making changes to that. You understand that? If you say, I don't want to do that, Jeff, I want to make my own, then do that. But you're going to be graded mostly on this test on the JavaScript. I don't care how pretty your form is. I really don't. So that's what I would suggest that you do. Again, if you decide, no, I don't want to do that, then that's your call. All right? So, the same thing with the CSS. You're already given CSS. Not a lot, 50, 60, 70 lines worth, but I just use that. So let's bring up the JS file, and that's what I'd like you to bring up. And you'll notice when we bring it up, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. That's what I want to do. All right. There are some comments in here, and there's some stuff in here, but there's no real code. All right, this is a JavaScript miles per gallon program. The inputs are miles driven, which again must be between 1 and 1,000 rather. Gallons used, which must be between 1 and 50. So again, you could always start on the next program if you wanted to by copying this in, making changes. You already know what those changes are. The height must be between 12 and 96. The weight must be between 1 and 777. All right? I've got the use strict up there. You all now know what the use strict is for. All right? Everybody does. Am I right in assuming that everybody understands the meaning of each one of those constants? Any questions on any of those constants? I'm asking. This is your time. If you've got a question, this is your time to ask. All right? Now, the first thing that's in here, because we're going to start putting the code in now. The first thing that we're going to do in here is it says use the $sign as an alias for the usual document.getElementById. And if I was reading that, I'd think, what the hell are you talking about? So I'm going to put it in. It's literally 3 lines of code. 3 lines. So I'm going to put it in, give you about a minute or two to type it in, then we will go over it. All right? That's the whole function right there. Okay, so please type that in. All right? Does anybody want to take a guess over what this is doing? I guess that's a no. All right. Now, previously we had said document.getElementById. Then we put in parentheses, and we had double quotes followed by some ID, double quote, right? Now instead of that document.getElementById, all we need to put in is a $sign. That's an alias. You don't have to do that. But it results in much less typing. All right? I'm going to ask a question. It's a trick question. So the answer is there is none. What's the name of this function? The answer is there is none. It is an anonymous function. Not only that, we're taking this function right here, this function. That's the function right there. That's in gray. And we are assigning it to a variable. Does that make sense to everybody? Because we're saying var $ equals. So what we're saying is when we use that $, be substituting in this function for it. Since we are assigning it to a variable, we must put a semicolon at the end. That is mandatory. You must put that semicolon in. If you don't, it's going to think, well, you're going to keep on and it's all still part of the same variable. You will confuse the hell out of the system. That's the best way I can tell you. So again, by putting in these 3 lines, all right, now when we start typing stuff in, you're going to see it right away why we did this. I mean right away. So what are we doing next? This is the function that will be called when the reset button is clicked. Well, again, as I said, you are all intelligent people. So let's look at what happens when we click this button. What do we want to have happen? 4 things. 4 things. First, we want whatever is in here to go away. Second, we want whatever is in here to go away. Third, there will be a value in here. We want that to go away. And fourth, we want our cursor to go right there. Does that make sense? So when we click the reset button, we want those 4 things to take place. Now, if you look here, all right, we've got miles driven. It's got an ID of miles. We've got gallons used. It's got an ID of gallons. We've got miles per gallon with an ID of MPG. Okay? I don't want to have to say get element by ID, double quote, miles driven, double quote. Now I can just say $, and then in parentheses, that. That's why we use an alias here. All right? So, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to put in right here, var reset form. Did you notice this? Did you notice when I just typed in reset here, how it turned brown? That means that it recognizes it, that it's used in some other context. The system is confused. Unless your variable names stay black. All right, notice if I put an S in there, it goes black. You want your variable names to be black. Black is good. All right, brown is not. Because the system doesn't understand what that is. So there could be a potential problem. But I want to call this reset form, not reset from. Reset form. That's going to also be an anonymous function. That won't have anything passed to it. All right? And what do I want to do? Well, I just told you what I wanted to do. Oh, please look up on the screen. I'm sorry. Just look for this for a second. What I just told you is all true. How we said we want that to be disappear, except all that. But we also want those 2 asterisks to come back. Because that's denoting that these are required fields. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things we want to have happen. All right? So I misspoke. All right, so let's put in those 6 things. First thing, and the order in which you do these doesn't matter. Not really. All right, but I'm going to put in here $, miles, dot, value, equals, double quote, double quote. And I'm going to put a comment here that says this is the same as, you don't need to put in a comment, document.getElementById, miles, dot value equal double quote, double quote. So see what I've done? I've taken this, everything that's in here, everything, and collapsed it down to this. That's why I used an alias. All right? Then we want to do the same with gallons. And we want to do the same with MPG. So that'll be gallons. And that will be MPG. All right, you don't have to, but if I want to put this, this would say clear out text box values. All right, I really don't need these extra comments here. They're kind of wordy. So that's done the first three things that I want to do. Everybody hear that? Again, looking at it one more time, that has cleared this and cleared this and cleared this. Is there anybody who doesn't get that? All right, I mean, I can ask, and if you don't get it, but you don't answer, I've got to assume that you get it. All right? The next thing I want to do is I want to add this back, and I want to add this back. Everybody hear that? I want to add those back. All right? And I'm going to put the code in there because it's the exact same code twice, but one is for miles and one is for gallons. But we'll go over it after that. So I'm going to grab both of these. And I'm going to type in a comment that says, add back the asterisks. All right. All right. So this is going to change. So this is dot I already had that. All right. That's the whole function. So I'll let you put that in, and then we'll go over it in just a minute. Yes. For lack of better words, yes. All right. We are not going to have, I don't believe we don't have a main in here, but what we are going to have later is in our onload event, we're going to tell it what we want to have happen and when we want it to have happen. So in other words, what we'll do is we'll tell the onload event that when you click the clear button, that we want that function to fire. Because with main basically is if you're doing an application program. But in here, we have no guarantee how they're going to enter this information. Main doesn't really make sense in a program like this. This is totally event driven. All right. Probably the things that screws you up the most in this function are these lines right here. And it's telling it to do what's called walk the DOM. And it's telling it to go through there, and it's saying, okay, for miles. Okay? Whatever comes next for miles, the next sibling, if it has a child, I want its value. What the hell does that mean? That means that whatever literally comes next in our HTML, and what is that? Well, let's take a look. So what comes after miles? This does. That's on the same level as miles, so it's a sibling. So what we're saying is, maybe it's easier to look at right here. I don't know. But what we're saying is, pretend these aren't there for right now. Pretend those things are both gone. All right? So this is saying, go to its next child, which is here. All right? And it's, where are we? Next element sibling dot first child dot node value. It's, for lack of better words, it's a necessary evil. It's saying grab the next thing. This is the way you typically do it if you wanted to note that fields are mandatory. Notice what field's not mandatory. This one. And you may or may not be able to tell. That's white, and that's gray. You want to guess why that's gray? Anybody? No. Well, yes, but that's not. It's read-only. Now, you're right. Not only have we not calculated, we don't want the user to be able to go in there and change it. So if I put 100 miles in there and I say I use 6 gallons, I want that to say 16.6. I don't want to be able to remove it and say 25. It's the same kind of thing if I put in, if I'm adding 2 numbers in the calculator and I put 6 here and 7 here and I click calculate, I want 13 there. And I can't change that. It's the same exact type of principle. So again, this is saying, clear out all 3 of the text boxes, one of which is read-only. This is saying, add the asterisks back. And this is saying, put the focus on the first element in there, the first text box, which is miles driven. Does the stuff that's in there make sense? You will, again, be able to probably copy a lot of this stuff over. All right? So let's look at the next function then. Everybody has this? Let's go to the next function. This is the function that will be called when the calculate button is clicked. It will validate the values in the 2 checkboxes. What does that mean? Didn't we use if statements in our last couple programs? So, and we still have those constants, so we're still going to use those. All right? If either or both of them are invalid, what are we going to do? We're going to keep that asterisk there, but we're going to put a message next to the asterisk that says either whatever you enter must be numeric, or you entered a number, but it's out of range. On the other hand, if they're both valid, we're going to tell it to calculate the miles per gallon. I tried to put a lot of comments in here so you could figure out exactly what I was doing every step of the way. All right. So this is the process entries function. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to declare and initialize variables. I'm going to have 3 variables in here. Var is valid equal true. We'll go over all these in just a second. Var miles equal parse float. Well, look, there's that darn $sign again. Yes, it is. There is no parse float as far as I know. There we go. Thank you. All right, you said you all understood this. So that's what we put in so far. I want to see if that's working. So run. Okay. So either it's incomplete or it's not working. Now, hopefully you figured this out from the last test. If I think there's an error right now, and I want to find out quickly what the error is, I hit the F12 key. And I go to console mode. And it's not showing me it, so there are no errors. You see that? It's not complete right now, but there aren't errors. That's a good sign. I hit F12 again, and the console goes away. If you're sitting there beating your head against the wall because you've got an error and you haven't hit F12, then you're being foolish. All right? All right, so what do we want to do next? Does everybody have this? Have those three variables? All right, so validate the miles value. And again, this is just a Boolean flag, right? I'm assuming that what I've got in there is true. What is this doing? These two are grabbing those values that I put into the text boxes. Does that make sense? That's literally what it's doing, is it's yanking those values I put into those two text boxes. All right? So, well, the first thing I want to do is I want to check for non-numeric input. Guess what? You know how to do that. If is not a number, miles. All right. So if what we put in there was not numeric. Sorry. Get rid of that. And that. And anybody notice my error in here right now? I need another right parenthesis. You all do it. I do it all the time. That's one of the reasons I like using this editor. And you know what? Maybe brackets is just as good if you use that. But if I leave it out and I don't notice it, well, it's showing me, well, look, these two map up. And if I highlight this one, there's nothing in red. Now there is. All right. So first I'm checking for non-numeric. And I'm coming in here, that $sign again. Now I'm going to put this on 2 lines just so I don't run out of room. That's the first check. And then we're going to make another check to see if it's out of range. And then we're going to make similar checks for, this is for miles, so we're going to have to do it for gallons. All right, so that's the is not a number. Does anybody, I mean, are we to the point where, do people get what this is doing now? All right, let's see. I have no idea. if this is enough where it's going to give us a message or not, but we're going to try it. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to put in something non-numeric. It's not letting me. Why is it not letting me? Because I set that field up as a number field. All right. So then why did I put that in there? Just in case. Because a lot of the programming you do is defensive programming. That's all I can tell you. All right. So now I've just done my is not a numeric check. Now I've got to do my range check. You know how to do this. Well, and it shouldn't be an if. How about else if? Does that make sense to people? That's saying if the miles that you drove was less than 1 or it's greater than 1,000, because those were our constant values. All right? So I'm going to just copy this and paste that in there, but I want a different message. And this one will just say out of range input must be 1 to 1,000. So notice we're doing the same thing here for both. We're just setting a different message, non-numeric message here, and an outer range message here. And I've said this to you before, and you might laugh or smile. It's not meant to be funny. You can only do so much programming to account for human stupidity. And if people are going to keep entering bad stuff in there, they're going to keep entering bad stuff in there. There's not really going to be that much you can do about it. Now, you probably have already figured this out. Some of you are probably still typing. What I would do, all right, this is one error condition. This is another error condition, right? Well, and again, I'll bring this back in just a second. But I'm going to have to put an else in here. Why would I putting an else in there? That's if what I put in was valid. Okay, so we're going to put that in a second. But I want to make sure everybody has this and everybody understands what's going on. With the first if, it's saying if I put in something non-numeric. The second if is saying I put in something out of range. They are two different things. If I do come in here into my HTML file and I take the field called miles and I make the type number, see that right there? That first check should never be hit. But I'm assuming that the person who created, and I might be the programmer, but not the person developing the form. If I work for a big company, there's a good chance that's the way it's going to be. And that person who's developing the form might not even know there's a type attribute other than text. All right, so I'm trying to account for their naivety, that they just don't know any better. All right. So, everybody have this? So if it's not this and it's not that, I'm just going to put a comment in here that says input was valid. All right? You don't have to, but I'm just going to put it in there. Well, then what do I want to do? You know what? Then I want to take this thing, and I don't want there to be anything in there, including I don't want there to be an asterisk in there. They put in a valid value. Does that make sense? Now, looking around, it's quite obvious. Some of you type fairly quickly. Guess what? Some of you don't. So, especially for those of you who don't, if you look up on the screen here, everybody, I would recommend doing this. Grabbing everything from your if statement, starting with miles and going all the way through the else, everything, grabbing all that, so that's line, and for me it's line 72 through 95, so those 20 or so lines. Copying it, oops, I don't than what I just did. Grabbing all that, copying it to the clipboard, coming down here where it says validate gallons, all right, check for out of range, and I take that and I paste it in and change everything that's in there from miles to gallons. So again, this will be now and the input for there says what how many gallons can we have? I think it's 1 to 100, not 1 to 1,000. We call it gallons or gals? Gallons, okay? So it's essentially running the same checks again, but instead of running it against the miles, it's now running it against the gallons. Does that make sense? All right, answer me this question. If you look up on the screen here, it's not meant to be a trick question. Am I always guaranteed that when somebody runs this program, even though that's where the cursor is, am I always guaranteed that they're never going to do this and go there first and put in a number? Can I make sure that happens? No. The answer is technically yes, I can do that, but I have to be checking. So if I'm here and I click there, what happens? Blur event, focus event, right? I can check the blur event here, and if they put nothing in, I can literally force their cursor to go back there. That seems pretty extreme, but I can do that if I want to. All right, that would involve more JavaScript, and I don't want to do that. All right. So, any questions on this? If I get down to here, and is valid is still true, that means two things. It means I put in a valid miles driven, and I put in a valid gallons used. Does that make sense to people? So, as it says here, if the isValid flag is still set to true, call the calculate MPG file. So, if isValid, do I have to type anymore and say that's the same thing as saying if isValid equal true? All right, we all know that now, right? All right. So what do we want to do? We want to say, well, whatever we're going to put into that MPG thing, so its value is equal to the results of calculate MPG that's going to need the miles and it's going to need the gallons. We haven't written that yet. We're going to write that in a minute. Good news is it's a spanking one line. That's it. We only have about 5 more lines to write and we're finished. Yes, sir. Does what? Does that else have to be gallons? Are they all the other ones? Is it? Yes, it is. Thank you. Yeah, that's gallons. Well, I can give you the smart aleck answers only if you want it to work, but yes, very good. Yeah. So this is saying if my valid flag is still set to true, then I can perform the miles per gallon. So I'm telling it to go out and perform the miles per gallon. What is that? It's miles driven divided by gallons used, right? Grab that, give me that value, and put it in there. But now it's putting it into the form. Previously, we had done an alert or whatever. Now we're throwing it right back into the form. We're throwing it into that gray area, that read-only area. All right? Make sure, again, at the end of this, you've got the semicolon. You leave it off, it's not going to work. And it may or may not be caught if you hit F12. Using the debugger isn't perfect. All right, so this function calculates the miles. The good news is you already know how this function works. All right, and it's return miles divided by gallons. And let's put it 2 fixed on here. So we return it with 2 decimal places. That's it. That's that whole function. What's that? Thank you. Well, I'm making a new word. Return. All right. But that's good because you saw it, and one thing is it was black, right? So we know it was a valid variable name, but it wasn't a keyword. Thank you. So we have one more function to write. That's the onload, and that's 1, 2, 3 lines of code, and we're done. All right, this took longer than I thought, but I'm essentially giving you the test right now. There's a few more things that you're going to have to do, but between this and the exercises we've gone over in as a class, you've gotten the test. And I don't know what more I can do. You know, I'm just saying, don't get me wrong, I'm saying, yeah, you're fantastic, Jeff. No, I don't mean that. I already know that. But no, I'm just kidding. I don't mean that. But what I'm saying is, there's only so much I can do. And then it's put up or shut up next week, Wednesday, for you guys. All right? So the only thing that's left then is on program load, is to set my stuff up. This is 3 lines of code. I'm going to put comments for each one. Tell system that when calculate button clicked, call the process entries function. All right, so how do we do that? In fact, I'm going to just put them all in here right now. That's it. We'll let you type that in, then I have a question for you, because we're just about finished. We'll be done in 5 minutes, ideally. What's missing here? What do I normally have at the end of this? Yeah, don't put parentheses in there. If you put in parentheses, it calls the function. We don't want to call the function here. We're telling the system to basically line up. That we're saying, when you click this, call this. When you click this, call this. Don't call it until you've clicked it. If you put parens in there, it will literally call it there. That will be wrong. All right, now we've got all the magic in. I have no idea if I put any errors in here. I didn't try to, but I'm going to check. I always like to start with something that works. So let's put in 100 miles, and they drove 10, calculate. Okay, well, you notice it's giving me an error, so something's screwed up. I forgot something or whatever. I'm going to hit F12. All right, I'm going to console, and it's not showing me any errors. Well, that's not a good sign. Well, and I'm looking in here. Notice it's letting me put in something that's non-numeric. And the reset's not working either. Let me show you what it should look like. How's that? Where'd I put it? It's highlights, I think it is. No. There. All right. Nothing in there. Notice what happens. Non-numeric. That looks right. Let's put in something that's out of range. See how the message changed? All right, let's put something that's in range. And it worked, and those all went away. I click reset, and it's back. All right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to print out for everybody. You are all going to get one. It's not that long. You're all going to get a copy of the JavaScript, and I'm going to see if I can figure out what I did wrong. But I want to give you at least an hour and a half today of lab. All right? So I'm done talking. I'm going to print out a working copy of just the JavaScript right now. Print on both sides. Let's just print one and make sure it works. Okay, I accidentally printed out portrait instead of landscape, but that's actually a good thing because it fits on one page. Take one and pass it down to your row, please. All right. You. So I may have put something in there erroneously, but you can check your code now against that code because that code works. All right, so tomorrow I will be going over the test. So as soon as you get in here at 8:05, I'm going to start going over the test. All right? Okay. We have anybody who wants to do the retake? Okay, then, yeah, I'll put them. try to put you in the other room, hopefully you can go into the conference room and go in there, okay? And I haven't totally graded yours, but some of it was incomplete, like you said. So I've taken it you're going to want to do that, all right? And now if you want to go look for the next test, you're going to have to watch the tape, okay? My wife doesn't know this, but I do plan on coming back on Sunday and trying to leave by 9 o'clock. I don't think I have it in me to watch the Packers just get blasted by Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger's just going to have a field day, all right? But I do plan on Sunday night hopefully being able to come in and have everything graded, all right? I'm pretty much caught up on grades, not totally, but I plan on having everything graded by Sunday night. So when you come in here on Monday, all right? And that's lab next week, remember. I think that, let me say that. Again, tomorrow is, how did I lose that? I did though. Where's that schedule? All right, so tomorrow again, go over the test the first half of the period, the rest is lab. Monday, lab all period. Tuesday, as soon as you come in, you'll take the written test for Chapter 6. Rest of the period is lab. Wednesday, the hands-on test. Thursday, we're going to write that game. If we get it done early, the rest of the period will be lab. And Friday, we'll be updating that wedding site. Okay? Any questions on what we're doing tomorrow or any of next week? We're pretty much, so far at least, we're on schedule. All right?